Hey there, welcome to Fresh Air at 5, episode 200. Can't believe it's episode 200 already. And anyhow, this past week as I've been walking and I've hit a 5-day walk week, proud of that. Didn't get waylaid and stay inside as I have, but I got out every day. It's been around 1 degree Celsius to minus 2 degrees Celsius and clear. I got wet one day, but that's all good. In this week, I listened to a number of podcasts and reflected on those as is my normal practice. But I also have hearing your voice on episode 200, a call out to some friends and people that listen, and they sent me their comments. And you're going to hear them this week. Got the long-standing every episode listener, Cami Canican. She shares her thoughts with us. I've got Jeremy Jorgensen out of Wisconsin, a new friend on social. And he's from the Y-Edify. My dad, he's a big fan. And he says to me, I don't always get what you're talking about, but I like listening to hear you talk about what you're learning about. We've got Cam Ross out of Melbourne, Australia, as he shares his thoughts. And Cam and I have been connected for a couple years. Super great guy down under. And we've got Lauren McLean, the host of Teach Outdoors and a friend through the Lower Mainland Content Creators. So that's fantastic. Thank you, Lauren. One of my favorite podcasters for his energy and enthusiasm about educational technology is Jake Miller out of the the Educational Duct Tape podcast, and he talks about EdTech a lot. Phil Stringer, a new friend. I got to connect with Phil about a year ago as he invited me to a meeting to talk about my thoughts about AI and how over the past, since May of last year, that we have grown in our understanding, and he's part of the Lower Mainland Content Creators group as well. Victoria Walders, she shares her thoughts. Victoria and I have been connected for a number of years. She's with the Accessibility Resource Center of British Columbia, and has invited me to partner with her on some projects, and it's been super fun. So thanks, Victoria, for your words. And finally, my friend Joanne Friesen, close friend here in Abbotsford, educator at a school nearby mine, and she shares what Fresh Air at 5 means to her. So thanks so much, all. And yes, this is episode 200. I share some thoughts about the experience over the past 4 years with you in this episode. But without further ado, enough about me. Let's listen to what's going on here with Fresh Air at 5, episode 200.
Hi, I'm Chris Nesi from the House of EdTech podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter, coming to you every week from Abbotsford, which is about 45 minutes east of Vancouver, British Columbia, on the west coast of Canada. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to get some fresh air by walking about my neighborhood, which is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Stolo people, the Simath First Nation and Mathwee First Nation. I consume podcast content while I walk, then reflect on this content in an unedited video, which I post on my X, formerly known as Twitter, channel every day. This podcast is the collection of the audio taken from those daily selfie videos over the course of a week, Monday to Friday. So let's jump into my listening and learning this past week.
Hey PLN, it's Monday, January 13th, 2025, and I am just outside right now. I've listened to episode 18 of season 5 of Cheech Happier as Suzanne Daly brings us a challenge to level up our game this year with intentional acts of kindness. I really like how you talk about this, Suzanne, about the intentionality of kindness as opposed to random acts of kindness, because it affects a different part of our brain when we actually think about making a difference for somebody, as opposed to we're just there and it just happens to happen. So good. You talk about leveling up our intentional acts of kindness, gratitude, and relationships in the next 3 episodes. Take a listen to this one, because you talk about talking about someone behind their back in a good way so that it gets back to them and they hear that someone else is talking about them behind their back, and then it just increases serotonin, dopamine, and all those goodness. Thanks, Suzanne. Appreciate you. Talk to you. Bye-bye. The last thing for January 13, 2025. All right, so this is episode 200 of Fresh Air at 5. That is, you're hearing right now if you're listening to the episode. But this week, I'll be recording the segments like this for this Friday's release of episode 200. Super excited. It's been 4 years in the making that we are getting to this spot. 4 years happened a couple weeks ago. Actually, last week, which is pretty exciting. But this is episode 200. I'd like to hear your voice on my podcast. So if you would want to send me a note of encouragement or congratulations, or what Fresh Air at 5 means to you, or why you care, that'd be fabulous. And I will put your voice here in with these segments this coming Friday. Check out the show notes for episode 199, as there's a couple links there that you could use for a form to send it on. Appreciate. Talk to you. Bye. Hey, PLN, December 14, 2025. Good morning to you. Hope this finds you well. I'm out at 0 degrees Celsius, that's 32 Fahrenheit, and it is crisp, clear, and we are under the wolf moon, which is a full moon in January. And I think I took a picture of it, that Mars is hanging out right beside it in the sky right now this morning, which is pretty rad. All right, this morning I listened to episode 118 of Evolving with Gratitude, as Lainey Rowell brings us an episode called Curiosity Over Judgment, a simple way to deepen connections. And Lainey talks about the importance of relationships and about a fresh set of eyes to approach relationships with and difficult people in our lives. And the Buddhist concept of Shoshin, fresh eyes, and how we can see people through fresh eyes. Hang on, I'm coming right back. One more thing for January 14, 2025, continuing my thoughts on episode 118 of Evolving with Gratitude with Lainey Rowell, as she talks about Shoshin, a Buddhist concept of approaching every day with fresh eyes. And how can we see people in our lives through fresh eyes every day? You know, the difficult people, even our loved ones, the ones that we get along with great. Seeing them through fresh eyes allows us to look at them with curiosity, like we met them for the first time. And you know, Lainey, this is fantastic, because I'm going to school and there are, I shouldn't say it, difficult students in my classes that challenge, right? And how can I approach them today with fresh eyes and be wondering about what is going on? You know, maybe I'll see something that I haven't seen. Thanks for the encouragement. Appreciate you. Take a listen to 118 of Evolving with Gratitude with Lainey Rowell. All right, the call went out to hear your voice on episode 200 of Fresh Air at 5. And this segment coming up, we have my dad, who's been a longtime fan of mine since I was born, actually, right? You know, and so you're going to hear from Gordon Carpenter, my dad, on this upcoming segment, as well as one of the OG listeners of Fresh Air at 5, Cami Cannikins out of Southern Alberta, and she is the host of the Prairie Rose Possibilities podcast, and she's an educator and wonderful person who I've been fortunate to have in my corner since the beginning of episode 1. So you're going to have to listen to the whole episode on Friday when it drops, but here is the voices of Gordon Carpenter and Cami Cannikins. And you know what? We'll put in
Phil Stringer, a math teacher from North Vancouver as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm just calling as Brian's dad, Gord Carpenter, and commending him on his 200th episode of Fresh Air at 5. I can imagine Fresh Air at 5, 365 days of the year. There must be a little bit of coolness there as well. Anyhow, I just thought I'd let you know that I enjoy listening to his podcast occasionally. And I did give him a little pointer of saying and oh and you know. Well, he's speaking to an audience who doesn't know. That's why he's informing everybody. So I suggest that you continue listening, and I do commend him again on number 205 of Fresh Air at 5. Okay, so long for now. Brian's dad, Gord Carpenter.
Well, hello, Brian Carpenter and Fresh Air at 5. This is Cami Cannikins coming to you from Southern Alberta. And Brian, I am so excited for episode 200. I have listened to every single one of them, including episode 1, which came out in January, some years ago. I don't know, 200 episode worth of years ago. And I remember that listening to the very first one. I've listened to all of them ever since. And I've learned about lots of podcasts that I've worked into my own podcast routine, probably like Suzanne Daly and Lainey Rowell and some others. I've had the good fortune to even be on your podcast a couple times as we've gone back and forth, and you've been kind enough to occasionally listen to my little Prairie Rose Possibilities podcast where I talk about things in our Southern Alberta school district. And so that's been fun to hear your reflections on that, because I know that you are really a Southern Alberta boy at heart. I'm excited that you've gotten to 200, but not surprised. You've been disciplined and you get out there even sometimes when you don't feel like it. And so you've been a real model of perseverance and grit and stick-to-itiveness. And it's because of that I can't wait to hear up to episode 300.
Just before my son's soccer practice, enjoying a Vancouver evening in East Sound. Air is crisp, energy's good. About to take the boys for a warm-up run. Feels like the perfect setting to reflect on something worth celebrating. Ryan, congratulations on reaching 200 episodes of Fresh Air at 5. What an amazing milestone. It's clear how much passion and effort you poured into every single episode. As a listener, I can say it really shows. Your reflections and summaries are really good. You've got such a unique and consistent gift to the education community that you're giving back to us all every week. And they make us pause and think and grow. Exactly what educators should inspire in others. It was such a great pleasure to meet you at PIMS last year when we presented together on AI and education. You really come across as having a lot of thoughtful insights, and you're genuinely curious about where tech can take us, and you bring that same curiosity, enthusiasm to Fresh Air at 5. And that's what keeps us coming back for more. And I admire your consistency, coming back every week, sharing what you've learned every day as you listen to your podcasts. It's a dedication that's rare and inspiring. Reaching 200 episodes, no small feat. Looking ahead, I'm really forward to seeing you again at the next Lower Mainland Content Creators meeting. It's always great to connect, share ideas, and share our passions. So congratulations again, Brian. Here's to 200 more episodes and beyond. Keep going and know that your work truly makes a difference. Later.
All right, the last thing for January 14, 2025, just walking past Bruce's house. He came out with Sophie, his dog, and I decided to push pause on the podcast I was listening to and walk with him and talk with him. And it's great to talk with him, great to see him. We haven't seen each other since before the new year, so great to catch up. All right, I was listening to, and I have not finished, but you should go listen to it, the Easy EdTech Podcast, episode 302 with Monica Burns, as she brings us 9 AI tools to help you with your presentations. Now, I haven't listened to them all,
But PowerPoint, I'm guessing she's going to mention a designer in PowerPoint that can help you with your presentations, but there's probably many others. So go take a listen to this for yourself, because I can't actually speak to this yet, except I'm excited to finish listening soon. Thanks. Happy day. Okay, bye. Hey, PLN, it's January 15, 2025, just out for fresh air at 5 this morning. It's minus 1 degree Celsius. It seems a lot warmer than yesterday at 0 because the humidity has dropped. It is not icy out here, which is nice. I can see the moon. It's a near full moon with Mars off to its right. It's fantastic. All right, this morning I listened to episode 258 of the House of Ed Tech with Chris Nesi as he brings us an episode entitled AI-driven personalized learning, the future of education. So go take a listen as Chris talks about ethical things, talks about how our fear as teachers are being replaced, doesn't need to go away, it needs to go away, and other things like that. Good morning, Shannon. And yes, so I'm coming right back. Hang on. One more thing for January 15, 2025. All right, episode 258 of the House of Ed Tech has Chris talk about AI personalized learning, the future of education. So how can we use AI chatbots and assistants in our classroom with our students to support their learning so that we can be more effective teachers? Meeting every student's needs in the classroom throughout the day, that is nearly impossible for a human being to do. But with these tools, they can get some math support, writing support. Chris talks about an example in his classroom about writing and how he uses the Magic School writing assistants to help with writing. Yes, Chris, it's awesome. It's fantastic. But, there's so much that we got to do. And teachers, we have to engage it. If we don't engage it, it's not going to work out. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you. Thanks, House of Ed Tech. Okay, bye. All right, hearing voices for January 15th, 2025. Yes, the call went out to get some listener and support people of mine around me to share their thoughts about Fresh Air at 5. I've got a couple for you. One is Victoria Walders out of British Columbia, Langley, BC, just down the road from me. A friend of mine. She's a educator that works for the Accessibility Resource Center of British Columbia, and how she brings technology and tools into education and talks about supporting those that need support with tools. Jeremy Jorgensen out of Wisconsin, 8th grade teacher, whyedify.com is a friend of mine that I met on Twitter. Never met him face to face, but he started listening to my podcast, started getting out walks and creating content kind of like mine. So he's got a blog and a new podcast coming up in April. So listen to Jeremy Jorgensen at the end of this. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. This is Victoria Wolders, and I am here talking about Fresh Air at 5. And I'm so excited to be able to be celebrating with Brian Carpenter, his 200th episode. What am I saying here? So I'm here just to say a few little things. First of all, I would love to tell you why I like Fresh Air at 5. I love Fresh Air at 5 because Brian is inspirational. Full stop. I love the fact that he has the energy to get up that early in the morning to go for walks, to be able to synthesize information, to continue to have the charisma, the enthusiasm, and the passion to continue to do this is awe-inspiring to me. He is an amazing educator. I've been able to see firsthand how he teaches, and also worked with him on several different projects, including our big Kamloops presentation we did back in the fall for over 250 people, which was absolutely amazing. I often listen to it on my phone. So yeah, I have even parachuted into Twitter or X, but also to other platforms as well. And yeah, I just really appreciate Brian. I think that what you're doing, Brian, makes me a better person. It inspires me to be a better parent. It inspires me to be a better educator and definitely a better presenter. I love the fact that you continue to engage people in lifelong learning, and that is just so cool to me. So with my job with the Accessible Resource Center British Columbia as an outreach coordinator, it has just been so cool to be able to partner with you and to be able to jump in and out of Fresh Air at 5. So congratulations on your 200th birthday, and I wish you well. Yay!
One of the things I appreciate about Fresh Air at 5 is Brian's passion for professional learning and sharing it with others. I know he's going to give me some great insights and podcast suggestions in an entertaining and bite-sized format. I like to listen when I'm hiking or driving in the truck, and he's also inspired me to start sharing some of my thoughts in a more public way through some of my social media connections. Highly recommend checking Fresh Air at 5 out.
The last thing for January 15, 2025, what's going on with me and podcasting as I bring you Fresh Air at 5 every week or so. You know, it's been 200 plus episodes, 200 episodes and 4 years plus of those episodes. So that means, over the time, I have hardly missed any weeks of recording. Maybe 8 weeks in that time due to sickness, due to injury, other things like that. But overall, it's been about consistency for me in being able to provide my recommendations and increase my professional learning through podcasts. Professional learning is so important to me, and this is one way that I can get a lot of content. It does affect my practice. It affects what I do in class. It affects how I talk to my students about technology and teaching and wellness. So those are some things I've got to share. I'll have more. Thanks. Bye. Hey, PLN, it's January 16, 2025, out for Fresh Air at 5. It is foggy, 1 degree Celsius, and I'm getting a bit wet. But it's all good. I'm enjoying my morning walk. It's refreshing, as always. And this morning I listened to a new to me podcast, Teachers Deserve It, with Ray Hewitt and Adam Welcome. They had on episode 8 guests, Hans and Jennifer Apple, out of Eastern Washington State, neighbors of mine just across the border. Thank you for being neighbors. And we're in the west part of the continent, doing some things in education. All right, as I listen, I discovered that this is an older podcast from 4 years ago, as COVID was going on. Some great things they talk about joy and culture and taking care of kids as we should. Take a listen to this because there's some good content here. Thanks. Bye. All right. Hearing voices on episode 200 of Fresh Air at 5. Told my daughter that last night, and she said, "Dad, that sounds creepy, like you're hearing voices in your head." Well, daughter, I listen to podcasts in the ears. They go through the earbuds, and they are in my head. So the voices that you're going to hear on the podcast coming up are those of Lauren McLean, and she is a new to me friend through our Lower Mainland Content Creators group, and she's the host of the Teach Outdoors podcast, and has written a book and has another couple on their way. So thanks, Lauren. We've got Cam Ross out of Australia, Melbourne, an administrator, and he's been following me for a while. Appreciate you, Cam, listening, and thanks for your thoughts as you share. And finally, Jake Miller of the Educational Duct Tape podcast, as he is a podcast host. I've been listening to Jake for a while and appreciate the content he puts out and our friendship. So take a listen.
Hi, my name is Lauren McLean, and I just wanted to say a huge congratulations to Brian for your 200th episode. That is truly an accomplishment, something that not many podcasters get to. I want to say why I love it so much. I often listen while I'm doing my morning walks. Brian is an inspiration for that. Not only is he so committed to what he does every day, but I love that every week I am learning about new podcasts that I can now listen to. So thank you so much for everything that you do. Such an inspiration, and keep going.
Hey Brian, Cameron Ross from Melbourne, Australia, just checking in, wishing you congratulations on 200 Fresh Air at 5 episodes. Each and every week, really enjoying listening and learning from your takeaways from all those podcasts you listen to. I'm just out here enjoying a beautiful Sunday morning, out getting some fresh air myself. Congratulations again on the 200 episodes, and can't wait to hear another 200. Congratulations, Brian. Cheers.
Hello, Brian and Fresh Air at 5 family. This is Jake Miller from the Educational Duct Tape Podcast and at Jake Miller EDU. First off, I want to apologize for the quality of this recording. I'm not in my recording space and I don't have my AirPods. I am being efficient like you are on the show, right, Brian? You're doing your recording while you're doing other things. So I am waiting for my son to come out of his basketball practice, and I figured, why not record now? I thought about walking around the parking lot to do what you do, Brian, out recording while walking, but it is really cold in Ohio right now. I bet it is in Canada too, and I don't want to get out of the car, Brian. I'm sorry. But more importantly, I want to tell you congratulations on 200 episodes of Fresh Air at 5. How cool, how exciting. Something definitely to be proud of, Brian. Congratulations on that. And I'm going to share two things that I really like about the show. The first of which is it's very innovative. Brian, you thought about your current situation. You know, I like to learn about educational technology and education, and I go for walks, and I'm a busy guy, but I have time during those walks to listen to podcasts and reflect on it, and I can share that stuff. And you said, I'll do it then. Nobody else does that, I don't think, Brian, and that's awesome. It's innovative, and it's exactly what worked for you, and that's amazing. And the second thing I want to share is that it models you being a lifelong learner, and I think that is really rad, Brian. So thank you for doing that. Congratulations on 200 episodes, and I will be back for episode 400 with a new message. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for everything. Happy day, everybody.
The last thing for January 16, 2025. Excited to listen to X Factor, Level Up Your Mental Game with Brian Martin, as Brian brings us an episode entitled Breaking the Perfection Trap, Lessons from a Brick Wall. And he talks about, in this episode, a Buddhist monk who was tasked upon arrival at a monastery to build a brick wall. And he was working perfectly and doing really great and all the things. And he got to the end and put the last brick on and steps back and sees two misaligned bricks. Brian's talking here about how we look at the imperfections in the work that we do and not see the 99.8% of the perfection that's going on. You know, what do we focus on? How do we get through this so that we can, make a difference? So keep your eyes on what you're doing good and celebrate that. Hey, PL, and it's Friday, January 17th, 2025, out for Fresh Air at 5, -2 Celsius, crisp, clear in the sky. The moon is no longer full, and I am walking and enjoying my fresh air, something super important to me. This morning I listened to episode 238 of Hindsight 101 podcast, as I was a guest on Morgan Michaels, the host's podcast back in November that aired yesterday. So I'm thankful, Morgan, for being a guest. We talked about creativity. We talked about empathy. We talked about wellness and how I am doing those things and being a leader in my building around these areas and encouraging others to do so. Thanks for listening. If you do take a listen to Hindsight 101, episode 238, and that's a bit more of my story of who Brian Carpenter is. All right, happy Friday. Hearing voices on episode 200 of Fresh Air at 5. This morning, I have one more listener segment to bring you. And this is my friend Joanne Friesen, who is an educator here in Abbotsford and good friend. And yes, she brings us her words, her kind words. You're going to have to listen to the episode that's going to be dropping later today so that you can hear her words, and as well as everybody else's that contributed over the course of this week and brought their thoughts about Fresh Air at 5 and what it means to them. So thank you for your words, Joanne, and the rest of you. Appreciate it very much. And this is getting close to the end of the full episode of episode 200. So I should probably hang this up and talk about some other things. One more thing about Fresh Air at 5 and episode 200. As I give you a summary a little bit, I was looking at my Spotify analytics and looking at them, and it looks like we have an equal mix of males and females listening to my podcast. The majority of listeners are out of the States, and about 57% or so, with another 25% in Canada, and then the rest beyond. I've got Australia on the list, and Spain, I think, and other places for listeners that, listen not all the time maybe, but that's fantastic. Appreciate that. And we've got over 11,000 downloads over the past 4 years. So that means, okay, listenership isn't massive, but it's consistent. I appreciate that. About 26, 28, 30 listeners a week. And so I appreciate you doing that. Thank you so much. All right, the last thing for January 17, 2025, wrapping this up, episode 200 of Fresh Air at 5. I listened to, on my walk, just as I came close home to home, the X Factor, Level Up Your Mental Game with Brian Martin podcast, episode 32, as he brings us an episode called Doing a Little, a Lot. So instead of doing a lot of things, a little bit, it's about the little things that we do a lot. He talked about 3 reflective practices. 1, how do you view failure in your past week and right now? What's your view on failure? Or do you stay failed? What do you do with the wins that you've had in your week, and ride on those and enjoy the wins you've had? And at the end of that, be grateful for what you have and the people around you. All right, coming back, because I got one more thing to say. And finally, on episode 32 of X Factor, Level Up Your Mental Game with Brian Martin, I am reflecting this week on the failures that I've had and how I view failure. And this podcast is a bit evident to some of those failures. Sometimes I don't get out the door. I'm not brave enough to face the weather or other things like that inhibit the progress of Fresh Air at 5 and the wins. Okay, today, listen to this episode, the whole episode. This is about the wins of Fresh Air at 5. What's happened over this past year, and I am so grateful for the people around me, the people that have listened, the people that have encouraged me, the content creators of Lower Mainland of British Columbia that I get together with and talk about creating content and being there, and my students and friends that cheer me on. All right, that's all I've got. Happy Friday. Wishing you well. Take care, and thanks for listening.
I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's like a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find some other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific episode podcast titles and episode numbers in the show notes, which are only a click or swipe away for your learning convenience. I've also started to put together a Spotify playlist of each of the episodes so that you can also take a listen to those specifically, and the link to that playlist is in the show notes. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoyed this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. You can also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Brian Carr, BRYONCAR, or at Fresh Air at 5. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can be found on the Educational Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day. Get some fresh air before the day is out and take care of yourself, because you are worth it.